Good evening, neighbors. It's Monday, January 14th, 2019, day 24 of President Trump's government shutdown. I'm Trek Reef, and you're tuned to BATV's The Meetinghouse. We have a great program for you tonight, but first, some headlines. Paweł Adamowicz, the liberal mayor of the Polish city of Gdansk, was assassinated today by a deranged member of Poland's far-right party. The six-term mayor had been speaking about the need for more love and kindness to a crowd gathered for a charity event when a 27-year-old right-wing extremist rushed the stage to stab the mayor directly to the heart. This after the majority far-right party's rhetoric in the media has been condemned internationally for inciting violence against liberals in Poland. After a 5-hour operation, Adamowicz was pronounced dead. He was 53 years old. Newton police are investigating after messages of hate were found across the city yesterday. The flyers, which included racist caricatures and connected Jewish people to pedophilia, were found around the city on 4 different streets, leaving neighbors shocked and disgusted. As of right now, Newton police do not believe there was a specific target and that the flyers appear to be random. Investigators say the incident is the first in the city in 10 years, and residents are glad to see police taking it very seriously. In a statement, the Anti-Defamation League of New England director, Robert Treston, said, "It's a pretty vile image and description of the most classic anti-Semitic stereotypes demonizing Jews and the Jewish religion." Billerica's state senator, Cindy Friedman, and Bedford state representative, Ken Gordon, have secured funding necessary to establish a shuttle service that will allow local restaurants to fill hundreds of job openings with otherwise unemployed workers from Lowell. As reported, the program will be funded largely by public investments in the first year and then will transition to private support over 3 years. By the 4th year of the program, the transportation service will be funded entirely by area businesses. It will begin as a link between Lowell and Burlington, but as it grows, plans are for it to extend to communities like Bedford and, of course, Billerica, as well as provide access to seniors and other members of the community. Saturday saw the second in a series of hikes for Hike Beautiful Billerica crew this season. With temps in the mid-20s, founder Marlise Henderson took a crowd of 42 intrepid hikers out for a grand tour of the Greeno Conservation Land. While a part of the Carlisle network of conservation land, a few acres of the parcel are within the town of Billerica. In keeping with the group's tradition of supporting local business, about 20 hikers enjoyed camaraderie and good food at the Riverview restaurant afterward. Hike Beautiful Billerica is a program of the Billerica Recreation Department, and more information can be found on their website. The Billerica Police Department would like to remind folks that Pond Street from Salem Road to Oak Street will be closed for construction for the rest of this week from 8:30 a.m. until 4 p.m. Detours are in place and local traffic will be accommodated. Air traffic controllers from the Atlantic to the Pacific in Canada directed a fleet of special arrivals into New York Air Traffic Control, Portland, Maine Air Traffic Control, as a gesture of solidarity and respect. And each was covered in a layer of gooey melted cheese. The Canadian Air Traffic Control Association Union units in Gander, Newfoundland, and Moncton, New Brunswick, ordered the pizzas for all of their colleagues at the control centers in Long Island and in Maine, who have been working without pay since the partial U.S. government shutdown began on December 22nd. Air traffic controllers provide essential services and are unable to suspend work or take any other job action during the Trump government shutdown. As a result, with no other government services running, there are 14,000 controllers working without pay. Local Canadian unions have been asking the national union what they could do to help since the U.S. government shutdown began under Trump. The pizza delivering task force from the Gander and Moncton crews is part of a national effort on behalf of Canadian air traffic controllers to show support for their American counterparts. There's around 2,000 miles to the Appalachian Trail winding from Maine to Georgia. I should know. I've thru-hiked it. And someone has to take care of all of that. Again, I should know. I'm one of the volunteers. Folks who volunteer for for the trail clubs help keep the trail free of debris, among other needed tasks including maintenance, outdoor recreation, nature ethics education, and outreach. And while volunteers can't be put on furlough, the federal government shutdown by Donald Trump has put their work on hold because government agencies cannot offer their necessary support. While the trail remains open to hikers and the clubs have other things they can do, without the Forest Service and Park Service insurance and support, the trail clearing and maintenance is on hold. Scientists have announced that something strange is going on at the top of the world. Earth's north magnetic pole has been skittering away from Canada and towards Siberia, driven by liquid iron sloshing around within the planet's core. The magnetic pole is moving so quickly that it has forced the world's geomagnetism experts into a rare move. They needed to update the world magnetic model to full years early. The most recent version of the model came out in 2015 and was supposed to last until 2020. But the magnetic field is changing so rapidly that researchers have to fix the model now. Due to be released tomorrow, it has been delayed due to President Trump's government shutdown. And now, for our first segment. I tried to get a guest for tonight's segment on the shutdown, but fear of losing one's job is so palpable that I've decided to do the show tonight on my own and without a guest. U.S. veterans make up 5.9% of the American working age population. But in the National Park Service, veterans make up 26% of the workforce. Laws that give preference to veterans in the hiring process make it easier for them to land jobs in government agencies. And historically, the National Park Service has attracted and retained veterans. Before we get into the facts of President Trump's government shutdown, I'd like you to see the human side of just who this is affecting. So here's a newsreel produced by NBC News for Veterans Day this past November. It's called A Second Act of Service.
This is another way to serve the country. When you sacrifice so much for something, you appreciate it more. Whether you're talking about public lands, national parks, U.S. forests, or any of that, we've only got these beautiful places if we preserve them.
Most people that are in the military have that desire and they want to serve. And no better place that I've found to serve other than the Army is the National Park Service.
I am the Chief of Interpretation for Bighorn Canyon National Recreation Area, and I've been here 20 years. The fire weather forecast for today, we have about 11 veterans that work in the park, which makes up roughly a quarter of our permanent year-round staff.
Veterans make up 5.9% of the American working age population. But in the National Park Service, veterans make up 26% of the workforce. Laws that give preference to veterans in the hiring process make it easier for them to land jobs in government agencies. And historically, the National Park Service has attracted and retained veterans.
Really, the Park Service's history lies with the military because before the National Park Service was established, the military was actually taking care of our public lands at that time. And so a lot of that tradition, you can still find that within the national parks. The uniform, there's rules in the way that we wear it, how we wear it, which is something that the military people, when they come on staff, really understand.
Many of the veterans at Bighorn Canyon National Recreation Area have found jobs that use skills they learned in the military.
I served in the United States Army for approximately 22 and a half years, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel. One of the great skills that I was able to pick up during my time in the Army was when I did a lot of stuff in cavalry units or scouting, you learn patterns of life. And so what I've been able to do is I've been taking that skill set and transition it to understanding where animals are at. I do all of our social media here at the park. I'm trying to get good pictures of the bighorn sheep. You can kind of take a look at some of the scat and just kind of follow them. And then also too, you'll see areas of bushes that have been eaten away, and it just kind of helps you understand their pattern of life, where they might be hanging out here in the park.
Half of veterans struggle to land the jobs they want after the military, a recent survey found. Experts say that this is often because employers don't understand how military experience translates to job skills. And for veterans, it can be hard to find a good fit when the day-to-day is so different from life in the military.
Prior to this, when I left the service, I had a job in a financial firm. I came home from work one day and I just said, I don't think this is the right job for me. When you're doing a lot of desk work, I realized that I think I want to be outside more because that's something that I loved doing when I was in the Army. This is the best office in the world.
The feeling I get when I get to drive the boat up and down the canyon is incredible, just to see the beauty, the different colors, and I'm amazed every time I get to do it. It's just like a blessing. I'm a retired first sergeant from the Wyoming Army National Guard. I served in 2 tours in Iraq, 2005, 2006, and then again 2009 to 2010. I worked with the Highway Patrol for about 3 more years, and then I retired from them and started this job with the National Park Service. Most of my job is what they call a maintenance mechanic, and I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I do whatever needs to get done to make the mission so people have an enjoyable experience at the park. When I make a trip out here, I like to look at all the signs, see if there's any signs that need replaced, have been damaged. I look for some driftwood if I need to, if we need to move it. And we look for boaters that are in trouble while we're out here in the lake. In the military, especially when we're deployed to forward areas, you never know what you were going to come up against. And a lot of times it was life-threatening. And law enforcement, you run into that too, because when you're out there, you never know who wants to hurt you. After my deployment, I was diagnosed with what they call moderate, light PTSD. And some of it wasn't just from the deployment, so I can't blame Iraq for everything. Some of it was off my law enforcement career as well. And working with this job has definitely eased that a lot. Definitely the stress levels dropped here. I sleep better at night now. My kids will even tell me I'm not yelling at them like I used to occasionally. My wife even say I'm happier. I don't see all the negative in life like I was seeing before. They're beautiful, aren't they?
I had 2 separate deployments. I was deployed to Iraq for the first deployment for approximately 14 months during the surge. And then I also did a tour in Afghanistan as well, and that was for about 10 months. For my first deployment over in Iraq, we had a lot of casualties that were going on during that time frame, and it's still something that I remember very poignantly. Nobody wants to go into a combat zone. And I still remember going to the hospital, and I remember seeing guys that had lost limbs, guys that had, tubes that were coming out of them, obviously, because they'd been in a horrific type of situation. I remember those things because that's the human cost of war, and I had a front row seat to that. There's stress at all levels that were involved with that, so yeah, absolutely.
This is kind of different, huh, being at the national park?
Yes, it absolutely is. It's a completely different world. It's a dream job, and to actually wear the flat hat on a daily basis and to help preserve such an important part of our national identity. You talk about being excited to get up every morning, that's me. I love what I do.
Here are the facts. 800,000 federal employees are wondering when their next paycheck will arrive because President Trump decided to partially shut down the government on December 22nd, including the people you just saw on air. On January 4th, President Trump said he was prepared for this shutdown to last months or even years. This is about 800,000 real people with real lives and real responsibilities. 420,000 employees are forced to work without pay, while 380,000 have been furloughed from work, and they can't afford to wait months or years for their next paycheck. They've got bills to pay and families to feed. In a list prepared by Vice Chairman Leahy's Senate Appropriations Committee staff, I have learned that more than 420,000 will be working without pay, including more than 41,000 federal law enforcement and correctional officers. That includes 2,614 ATF agents, 16,742 Bureau of Prisons correctional officers, 13,709 FBI agents, 3,600 deputy U.S. Marshals, and 4,399 DEA agents. Up to 88% of the Department of Homeland Security employees, including 53,000 TSA employees, 54,000 Customs and Border Protection agents and customs officers, 42,000 Coast Guard employees, and as many as 5,000 Forest Service firefighters, 3,600 Weather Service forecasters. And then, of course, more than 380,000 will be furloughed or have been furloughed, including 86% of the Department of Commerce, which is about 41,000 staff, 96% of NASA, which is 16,700 staff, more than 80% of the National Park Service, approximately 16,000 staff, at least 80% of the Forest Service, approximately 28,800 staff, more than 30% of the Department of Transportation, that's 18,300 people, 95% of HUD, that's about 7,100 staff, and approximately 52,000 IRS staff handling your tax refunds. Since the enactment of the Taft-Hartley Act in 1947, federal employees have been legally prohibited from striking. While that law was intended to prevent public sector workers from leveraging a work stoppage that could cripple the U.S. government or major industries in negotiations for better pay, working conditions, and benefits, I believe it's not likely that Congress envisioned a scenario where the government would require its employees to work as slaves without paying them, as is the case now. So, what can you do? I'd like to encourage you to get in the fight today, tonight, tomorrow. Do it. Here are some of the activities that I can encourage you to do to help the people affected by this shutdown, because an injury to one is an injury to all. First, contact the White House on social media and tell President Trump to work with Congress. They're trying to work with him to fully fund the government immediately. Tweet to the White House using the handle @WhiteHouse on Twitter. Send them a message or leave a comment on Facebook at facebook.com/WhiteHouse. Or call Congress at 866-803-8830. You're going to call 3 times, twice for your 2 senators and once for your congressperson, and tell them we need to fully fund the government immediately. There are resources available for those who need it, who have been furloughed, and I'll post those on the Meetinghouse Facebook page. Now I'd like to turn to an issue where we can maybe find some common ground. I didn't write copy for this one, so obviously I'm not going to be reading from the teleprompter here shortly, but it's from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, this next video. And it's a video of George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan debating on April 23rd, 1980. This is the Texas GOP debate, that presidential primary debate, April 23rd, 1980. I'm going to let it play, and then I would love to share some of my thoughts, and then hear your thoughts as well by email later on.
Now we're going to have some questions from the audience.
Yes, my name is David Grossberg, and I'd like to know, do you think the children of illegal aliens should be allowed to attend Texas public schools free, or do you think that their parents should pay for their education?
Who are you addressing that to?
I think you're first in this.
He was looking right at you. That's right, he was. Look, I'd like to see something done about the illegal alien problem that would be so sensitive and so understanding about labor needs and human needs that that problem wouldn't come up. But today, if those people are here, I would reluctantly say I think they would get whatever it is that they're, what the society is giving to their neighbors. But the problem has to be solved. The problem has to be solved because as we have kind of made illegal some kinds of labor that I'd like to see legal, we're doing 2 things. We're creating a whole society of really honorable, decent, family-loving people that are in violation of the law, and secondly, we're exacerbating relations with Mexico. The answer to your question is much more fundamental than whether they attend Houston schools, it seems to me. I don't want to see a whole, if they're living here, I don't want to see a whole thing of 6- and 8-year-old kids being made, one totally uneducated and made to feel that they're living with outside the law. Let's address ourselves to the fundamentals. These are good people, strong people. Part of my family is a Mexican.
Can I add to that? I think the time has come that the United States and our neighbors, particularly our neighbor to the south, should have a better understanding and a better relationship than we've ever had. And I think that we haven't been sensitive enough to our size and our power. They have a problem of 40 to 50% unemployment. Now, this cannot continue without the possibility arising with regard to that other country that we talked about, of Cuba and what it is stirring up, of the possibility of trouble below the border, and we could have a very hostile and strange neighbor on our border. Rather than making them, or talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back, and they can cross and open the border both ways by understanding their problems. This is the only safety valve right now they have with that unemployment that probably keeps the lid from blowing off down there. And I think we could have a fine relationship, and it would solve the problem you mentioned also.
Yes, sir?
We've come a long way since 1980. In fact, I wasn't even alive when that debate took place. It was 5 years before I was even born. But in the 38 years that have passed since then, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that things have definitely changed. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not a very big fan of the Reagan or Bush presidencies. And part of that has to do with their reaction to the HIV/AIDS crisis. But hindsight is 20/20. And with President Trump's rhetoric, immoral rhetoric, causing people to turn against each other and use immigrants as a scapegoat for all kinds of really problematic things, I couldn't help but bring this clip up because we are in a situation where we are trying to hurt people, where the president is purposefully trying to hurt people. He is purposefully trying to hurt people. You cannot tell me that his threat of keeping this government shutdown happening for as long as he possibly can is not an immediate threat to the livelihoods of the people who are directly affected, the 800,000 federal employees who are not being paid. And for what? Because he's a racist demagogue who does not want to take responsibility for the actions of his collaborating with people who he should not have been collaborating with. And of course that evidence will eventually come out, and it is going to come out, and we'll be hearing about that report soon. But we know that he is a liar, a big, big liar. I'm surprised his pants haven't spontaneously caught fire. But that is beside the point, because what's happening in this country right now is people are starting to treat each other with a level of disrespect I have never witnessed in my lifetime, though others say has existed somewhat in their lifetimes before me. And there was before he was president, Ronald Reagan saying, open the borders both ways. We have don't build a fence. We have Bush saying these are good people. So if they are good people who are just trying to make ends meet for their families too, and it would improve our relationship with the people south of the border to perhaps find out what their plight is, to be sensitive to their plight, to be sensitive to why they're wanting to come to the United States, perhaps we can start having a different discussion, a discussion about kindness, a discussion about compassion, a discussion about what it means as a country to have common sense principles, common sense ideas, a way that we can unite for a common purpose. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And if that is true, and men is used in that time period to refer to humankind. And if that is true, then all are created equally, and all are created to be deserving of equal respect, to be deserving of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if that's who we are as a nation, then we must say, here is how we will open our border. Here's a fact. It is not illegal to present yourself at the border to seek asylum. In fact, coming here, crossing the border and declaring, I'm here to seek asylum, is the legal process for doing so. And what has happened? They get put in cages, in concentration camps, if you will. That's not who we are as a nation. I'd like to invite you to email me, trekreef@gmail.com. It's pretty easy. Comments, questions, thoughts. I'd love to chat with some local folks here in Billerica and around the country about your thoughts and how we can find common ground. I used to be a Republican, believe it or not. And I might still be if it weren't for the rhetoric that has been getting worse over the years, especially the religious rhetoric. So if we're going to follow our religions, if we're going to follow our principles, we need to start talking to one another about what it means to be Americans then. Because I understand our religious principles, my own religious principles. They say to welcome the stranger, to clothe the orphans and widows, to help the hungry, to treat everybody, my neighbors, the way I want to be treated. And I know your religion does too, because every religion has this. And if you're an atheist, you already have morals that show you to be a good person. And I bet you anything, they're very similar to the golden rule found in all religions. So leaving religion out of it and talking just civically, all of us are human beings. And when I see you walking down the street, my primary concern is that you're safe and you're happy and you're able to do the things that you are able and would like to do without being accosted because of your race, your sexual orientation, your creed. I have a lot more to say on this, but I only have 1 minute and 30 seconds left of the show, and I want to close by saying this. I believe in love, and I try to live my life accordingly. I'm not perfect. I've become angry, and I'm sure some of my viewers who are friends of mine have seen me in my anger, and sometimes I'm angry at politics that I can't do anything about. But I want to make a commitment. I want to affirm that from here on out, I am going to try my best to promote love. And I'd like you to join me, starting right now. Thank you for watching this week's episode of The Meetinghouse. I look forward to your thoughts and comments at trekreef@gmail.com. Thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful night.